Great. So, dear WOLEP members, welcome. Thank you for attending our webinar. Today, on July 26th, we gather once again for another enriching session of the WOLEP webinar series. And before we go into this exciting topic prepared by Lucija, our guest speaker, allow me to briefly do a recap of the previous two webinars that we had this year. So in February, we kicked off the season with an exceptional presentation by Celine Snipe. She is our colleague from Amsterdam, the Netherlands. She's a specialist in corporate and commercial law. Celine shared her expertise in helping and educating online entrepreneurs and creators. Her topic on that day was guest agreements, which are needed whenever you appear online. And I think it made a significant impact on our members' knowledge and networking capabilities. And building on that success, in April, we had a webinar which featured another great session led by Miss Nadia Mesa del Castillo from Spain. So Nadia captivated our attention with an engaging presentation on collaborative practice, which is an alternative dispute resolution technique, which is focused on dialogue and collaboration in family crisis situations, and ensures a fair and equitable resolution to that specific problem. And now, as we approach the summer break, I'm thrilled to introduce our third and final webinar before this summer holiday. And today I have the privilege of hearing the presentation of our esteemed member from Serbia, from Belgrade, Miss Lucija Vranesevic Grbic. She is specialized in corporate compliance, company setup, data protection, and contract drafting in the tech field. And I can safely say that she brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table. Like I said, Lucia lives and works in Belgrade. She's not only a highly accomplished lawyer, but also a forward thinker when it comes to technological advancements. And I would like to quote her from our discussion that was also published on wolep.com. She said that, I quote, electric vehicles are gaining momentum as companies race to develop better batteries. Lithium-ion batteries currently dominate the market, but alternatives like sodium-ion batteries may prove easier to source. And these developments are critical to reducing carbon emissions and achieving sustainability goals. I know everyone talks about sustainability these days, Lucia. So I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to all of you for joining our webinar. Of course, your active involvement and thirst for knowledge are what make our community so vibrant and impactful. So my proposition for you would be to make most of this webinar and the remaining days leading up to our well-deserved summer break. And I will invite you to stay tuned for more updates from WOLEP and continue fostering connections and sharing your ideas within the WOLEP network. Lucia, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Theodore. Thank you very much for your kind words, and I would like to thank everyone for attending. I hope you will like it. Before I share the screen, I would just like to add that anytime you feel like you want to ask a question, say something, start a discussion, anything, just interrupt me, so we can make this like an interactive session. Okay, so I will now share my screen. We can begin, right? Okay. Let's start. Okay, here we are. Theodore said many things about me. I will add a few more. I'm a member of the Serbian Bar Association and the Belgrade Bar Association. I finished actually the law faculty in Croatia. Then I went to Belgrade, finished the master's degree in Serbia and passed the Serbian bar exam. From then on, I worked in a law firm that specializes in criminal law. In the interview I had with Theodore, I discussed the fact that I was transitioning from criminal law to corporate, mainly because of my interest and pure curiosity and some certificates I got along the way. So if you want to ask anything about the presentation or anything at all, here are my contact details, so feel free to contact me anytime. So we'll start now with the world of electric vehicles and batteries. First, before we define electric vehicles, I would like to add that there were two legal grounds for the expansion of electric vehicles. Even though they are not really directly connected to electric vehicles, they were legal grounds for the expansion of sustainability and green initiatives. First, we had in 2015 the Paris Agreement. That is an international treaty on climate change. It was adopted in the UN Climate Change Conference in Paris, and it entered into force a year later. It's not really about road transport. It's like a more general treaty that says that from 2020, each country has to submit nationally determined contributions on how it is fighting the climate change. And the main goal is to halt the increase in the global average temperature to well below 2 degrees of Celsius, above pre-industrial levels. So this is a binding international treaty. After that, 2 years after that, in 2017, we had the Paris Declaration on Electromobility and Climate Change and a call to action. It is also called the Lima Paris Action Agenda. So this is a declaration that specifically mentions road transport, as it says that road transport contributes almost 1/4 of the current global energy-related greenhouse gas emissions. And that if we do not take a major action, we can face rise of GHG emissions by nearly 20% by only 2030 and almost double by year 2050. I would like also to add that the International Energy Agency added to that Paris Declaration that to fight the climate change, electric vehicles would need to present 35% of global sales by 2030. And now let's start with electric vehicles. So here we have two definitions of electric vehicles. That's on purpose. First one says this, that electric vehicle is a vehicle that uses electricity as their primary fuel or to improve the efficiency of conventional vehicle designs. So you can see below there is a broad definition. So if this first definition includes hybrid electric vehicles, also parallel, series, or range extended, and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, battery electric vehicles, also called pure electric vehicles, and fuel cell electric vehicles. Then we have another definition that says a vehicle that can be powered by an electric motor that draws electricity from a battery that is capable of being charged from an external source. So this one is a narrow definition. Here we have only the plug-in hybrid and the battery electric vehicle, and by some opinion also the fuel cell electric vehicle. So as I said, if you have any questions, just interrupt me. I hope I'm not going too fast. When we talk about battery electric vehicles, we have certain advantages and disadvantages. I don't know if anyone of you owns an electric car, but the main advantages are, of course, zero emissions. Because it emits that. Then we have reliability. So this is like something that can be discussed. Because it is reliable, they don't suffer from wear and tear, engine explosions, they don't suffer from fuel corrosion and stuff like that. But on the other hand, they can be susceptible to very high or very low temperatures that we're going also to talk about later when we will mention chemistries. And another advantage is the cost of maintenance. and electricity required. That's when it comes to conventional vehicles with an internal combustion engine, or the vehicles we usually are used to drive. Then when it comes to disadvantages, first one is the battery costs. Batteries are expensive. Some batteries are more expensive than others. We'll cover that when we come to other slides. Driving range is a big problem, also depends on chemistries. But we are seeking a level of comfort that we already have with conventional vehicles. And at the moment, the electric vehicle industry and the battery industry is not there yet. The charging time and the limited charging infrastructure, this is also a problem. I would like just to mention that recently the European Union, within the EU Green Deal, has adopted a regulation that is called Alternative Fuels Infrastructure Regulation, whose objective is to build infrastructure across all member states that will have many charging stations for electric vehicles and stations for tanking fuel cell electric vehicles. Also, at the moment, China is the leader in the charging infrastructure, because in 2022, globally, there have been 600,000 charging stations installed in the whole world, and more than half of them were in China. So, but the European Union has adopted a regulation that set it as an objective to introduce a whole new charging infrastructure. Then we have issues linked to the extraction of raw materials that are used to create batteries. We are also going to mention that afterwards, but the main problems here are with scarce materials and with the extraction of lithium and cobalt. The extraction of lithium is usually connected to environmental problems, as it is a chemical process, and cobalt is colloquially known as the blood diamond of the batteries. Then we have the battery lifetime and storage. We are going to talk about the battery regulation. It is also a part of the EU's Green Deal that for the first time ever introduced an end-of-life management system. And as a conclusion, as you can see, all issues associated with battery electric vehicles stem from its main component, or the battery.
Sorry to interrupt you, Lucia, if you allow me a question.
Of course.
If you can go back to the previous slide. So at first sight, it seems pretty unbalanced, this report between advantages and disadvantages. So like I said, at first sight.
Yeah.
And I know there's been a debate about how polluting is the production of materials for the electric vehicles. So that is a paradox, the fact that they have zero emissions, so from the moment they go out of the factory, I mean, but before they, during production, they are pretty polluting. So that is somehow, a big problem.
Yeah, that is funny, because it's even problem with disposal and recycling, because it's not about, okay, we will drive an electric vehicle and there will be zero emissions. But before and after that, we call it a battery life cycle. And the value chain, which I'm also going to mention, starts from the extraction of raw materials. So here are many problems. And this is one problem associated with lithium, because lithium rules the market at the moment. And specifically some sort of lithium-ion batteries. But the problem, if the extraction is not done right, if not all safeguards are put into place, it is a process that can be a real hazard to the environment. And also the disposal, if it is not disposed right and there are leakages into the soil, there are some hazardous substances that go into the soil and into groundwater, like arsenic, cadmium, copper, and so on. So this can also be a danger for people, human beings. So like batteries from the day, they're going to be extracted, their materials to the processing, and then when the battery comes to an end, when we cannot have it more in an electric vehicle, we need to think about the disposal, recycle, or repurposing. So only then we can reach sustainability, because it's funny, just by driving with zero emissions just doesn't make the cut. So does anyone want to add something? I mean, Theodore said really a good thing about this. It's pretty unbalanced. Okay, if feel free to interrupt me anytime. I'll go now to electric vehicle batteries. So an EV battery is any battery specifically designed to provide traction to hybrid and battery electric vehicles. This word traction here is important because there is a difference between the automotive battery and the EV battery. An automotive battery is something every car has. It's used for lights, for ignition power, and similar. An EV battery provides traction and moves the vehicle. As I already mentioned, the industrial value chain of batteries, it's a long process, and it's a step-by-step process to produce batteries. First, we have the material extraction. As I said, lithium and cobalt became a real problem, that much of a problem that some manufacturers started to use less cobalt and shifted to some other materials. After that, the first phase is material extraction. Here we get the raw materials. After that, we need to produce cells of the battery. So we have these purified materials that are ready for commercial use. We put them into cells. Then we have module production. We have to pull those cells into modules so that they are protected from external stressors like shocks, vibration, and similar. After that, we assemble the battery pack, and it is ready to start its life and become integrated in a vehicle. That's when the battery cycle starts its first lifetime. After that, after a few years, the batteries, I think it approximately lasts 7 years at the moment. But there are systems that are going to be put into use to determine the parameters for durability. That's actually the end of this presentation. Then we put into the vehicle and drive. And then we come to the second life. We either recycle it and use these materials and put it into new batteries, or we repurpose it and put it into work in another place, usually at energy storages. So we have now a few types of electric vehicle batteries. I use the categorization based on before and after lithium. As I said, lithium rules the market, and there's a good reason for that. First, we had lead acid batteries. Some of the earliest electric vehicles in the 90s, for example, the Ford Ranger electric vehicle, used lead acid batteries. They have been very useful because they're now used in most conventional vehicles to start the engine. But when it comes to the usage in an electric vehicle, they are actually inefficient. They're susceptible to cold temperatures, they're less durable, and they're heavy and bulky. So for them, they made it possible to start any car easily, but we cannot use them for electric vehicles. Then after that came the nickel metal hydride batteries. The nickel is used here as the cathode material, and it is combined with several other chemical elements. It can be combined with iron, cadmium, and so on, but the best combination was the nickel metal hydride combination. It was used in the EV markets, again, in the early 90s, because it had an energy density higher than those of lead acid batteries. But they had a problem that they're expensive, inefficient at high temperatures. You see, lead acid were inefficient at low temperatures, and that nickel metal hydride is inefficient at high temperatures, and they discharge faster. So after that came lithium-ion batteries. So here is important to say that to understand the market, not all lithium batteries are the same. We have 6 different types of lithium-ion batteries. So when it comes to lithium-ion batteries, the anode of the battery is usually made of graphite. And the mineral composition of the cathode is what changes the battery's performance and composition. So in the cathode, we usually use lithium plus some other materials. So I won't mention all of these 6 versions of lithium-ion batteries, just the most important one. I don't want to complicate things. So first, I need to say the lithium, nickel, manganese, cobalt oxide. Okay, this sounds maybe a bit complicated, but this battery has been ruling the market. In 2022, 60% of the market share was filled with lithium, nickel, manganese, cobalt oxide, or NMC lithium-ion battery. They have a great energy density because they have a large proportion of nickel that is also considered as a scarce material. And because such a large proportion of nickel can make the battery unstable, they're added manganese and cobalt to improve thermal stability and safety. They have experienced commercial success. So mostly high-end vehicles use the combination lithium, nickel, and cobalt and manganese. For example, if you heard of the Croatian manufacturer of electric vehicles, Rimac Technologies, his high-end vehicles, for example, the latest one, battery of the Nevera vehicle has a combination of cobalt, nickel, and manganese, and they produce it in-house. Okay, so since there is a lot of cobalt in the NMC batteries, the market shifted then to lithium iron phosphate. This is a safe chemistry, and it is cheaper to make because they use iron and phosphate, but its energy is still a bit lower than it comes to the first version I said. Okay, so there are 4 more, but some use aluminium also. High-end vehicles are in question, but I won't bore you with that. So we are moving now. Why is lithium a good choice for electric vehicles? It's a good choice because it is lightweight. They are not heavy, they're not bulky, they have a good energy density, and they are less prone to cause fires. For example, some batteries that use hydrogen are very flammable. So that's why they have been used a lot, and as I said, they're ruling the market, but because of some problems that I mentioned on the next slide, we are searching for alternatives. So the issues of lithium-ion batteries are threefold. We have lithium extraction, disposal, and design. I have said already a lot about lithium extraction. It is not very environmentally friendly. For example, 2.2 million liters of water is needed to produce 1 ton of lithium. It is considered also to harm soil and possibly cause air contamination. As I said, it is a chemical process. And also lithium in its purest form is hard to find in nature. So we usually, when the mining is done, they are searching for lithium carbonate that is enough for commercial use, and then is being purified, which is again a chemical process. I mentioned also the disposal. When batteries are disposed, usually in landfills, they begin to corrode. If that is not made with precaution, the corrosion releases hazardous substances in the soil and contaminates it. And the lithium design, at the moment, scientists are searching how to make solid-state version of lithium batteries. Because lithium batteries consist of, at the moment, of a liquid electrolyte that can become volatile in its nature, and it can also has a possibility of catching fire, less than some other batteries, but the risk is still there. So they are searching to make them more solid by replacing the liquid electrolyte in the middle with a solid electrolyte that would be thin enough to fill the lightweight battery. And now we're coming to the alternative batteries. So most of these batteries that I'm mentioning here are still being researched. But the most popular here is the sodium-ion batteries. And if you have ever read something about electric vehicles and batteries, you have probably stumbled on headlines like, "Is sodium the new lithium?" Almost all sodium-ion batteries are manufactured in China. Even big battery manufacturers that are based in China, that have like 26% of the global market share, are turning to sodium-ion batteries. Sodium is, as you know, one of the primary components of the table salt. It is very plentiful in nature. It is easier to find, and it doesn't affect the environment so much, the extraction. And the groundbreaking thing is that it is chemically similar to lithium and performs very similar to lithium. It is less affected by low temperatures. It handles more charge on discharge cycles, but its energy density is lower. So at the moment, they cannot deliver the same driving range as a lithium and the same lifetime. But some companies already, also battery manufacturers and automotive manufacturers also based in China, are starting to put them into electric vehicles and putting them into commercial use. The second one are redox flow batteries. They have a great potential, but at the moment, they're hard to manufacture and they are large and expensive. When I say hard to manufacture, I mean that when we talk about electric vehicles, they need to be manufactured for a massive use. Because I was off record talking with Theodore before they started about that. It's not the thing that we can all drive, as I said, high-end vehicles. They need to be affordable for everyone. At the moment, redox flow batteries, even though they have a great promise, they cannot provide an affordable car that will have a good driving range, even though they have a long lifespan and require only little maintenance. That brings us to lithium sulfur batteries. This is not a subcategory of lithium. They are still being researched. They are, theoretically speaking, they're said that they can bring a very extended driving range, and they have a great potential. But the problem here is they cannot be at the moment used for a massive production, because they encompass lithium and sulfur. Sulfur is an element that is also plentiful in nature, but the problem is that it is used for the cathode of the battery. And as the battery charges and discharges, sulfur goes from a liquid state to a solid state and back to a liquid state. At the moment, such battery can be made for few vehicles, but it's very hard to make them become mainstream, because this chemistry is difficult to work with. And then we have aluminum air batteries. They're also very promising. They have been called in the automotive industry highly futuristic EV batteries that could deliver a driving range up to 1,600 kilometers. And they mix aluminum and oxygen to produce a chemical reaction that comes out in form of aluminum and electricity. So they're also zero emission. But as I said, they are still researched and they have not been incorporated into any vehicle yet. Okay, now we're going to the regulatory framework. I need to add here that the EU battery legislation proposal is not a proposal anymore. When I was submitting the papers for this presentation, it was a proposal. But from 10th July this year, this proposal has been adopted, and so we're now talking only about regulation. That's a new thing. Okay, so it is repealing the former battery directive that had some problems. It was not evenly implemented in member states across the EU, and it even didn't cover some important things that will be covered in that are covered in this battery regulation, such as end life management, supply chain due diligence policies, and so on. Then within the EU Green Deal, we have also the Critical Raw Materials Act. This is still a proposal, but I guess it will also be soon adopted. It is a comprehensive set of action to ensure the EU's access to secure diversified, sustainable supply of critical raw materials. Because the EU at the moment relies mostly on imports from third countries. And in relation to the battery regulation we are going to talk now, critical raw materials are considered lithium, nickel, cobalt, and natural graphite. And then we have the UN Global Technical Regulations. These are harmonized standards used to determine vehicle performance and safety across the whole industry. And we are going to mention that a bit later. Okay, so we have the EU battery. Just disregard this, it's not a proposal anymore. So main objectives are, of course, strengthening the functioning of the internal market by ensuring a level playing field and a common set of rules, promoting a circular economy, and reducing environmental social impacts throughout all stages of the battery life cycle. That is what also Theodor mentioned when he asked me a question. What are we doing with extraction and when the battery is being disposed? As I said, it's not sustainability is not only about driving a zero emissions car. The scope of application, it applies to all portable batteries, automotive batteries, EV batteries, and industrial batteries. Here we are only going to talk about EV batteries and industrial batteries, or as it is mentioned in the regulation, batteries with internal storage and a capacity above 2 kilowatt-hour. So, as I said, there is a difference between automotive batteries. It doesn't apply to batteries in equipment linked to the protection member states, security interest, arms, munition, war material, and equipment designed to be sent into space. So the main question is here, who will be affected? There is a direct influence and an indirect influence. The direct influence is the regulation uses the term economic operators. The economic operators are manufacturers, importers, distributors, or alternatives. And indirect is the rest of the supply chain, as certain obligations require information for the most upstream supply chain points. As we mentioned, the supply chain starts at the extraction of raw materials. Now, main requirements for electric vehicle batteries. First, we have the carbon footprint declaration. The carbon footprint declaration will need to be submitted with technical documentation that will contain some mandatory information about the producer battery, the location of the manufacturing facility, the total carbon footprint, third-party verification statement, and a web link to the public version of the study supporting the declaration. So it will all have to be open to the public. When it comes to EV batteries, there is a special requirement that there will be carbon footprint performance classes. At the moment, it doesn't explain what are carbon footprint performance classes. It is just said that the Commission will issue a delegated act that, like a supporting act that will explain what are carbon footprint performance classes and act as guidelines to producers on how to choose a carbon footprint performance class. Then this regulation actually brings out many a need to include many technical documentation. So we have here recycling, content, electromechanical performance, and durability. Again, there needs to be submitted technical documentation that contains information about the amount of materials, cobalt, lithium, nickel, that have been recovered from waste and present in each battery. This will be applicable from 1st January 2027. So batteries that come to an end need to be used and materials need to be picked from them and put into other batteries. And there will also be a supporting act as guidelines that will say how much of each material needs to be recycled. Then information containing values for electromechanical performance and durability requirements. Probably know that durability is a big issue when it comes to batteries, and the explanation of technical specifications, standards, and conditions that are used to measure, calculate, or estimate these values. Then we have labeling and conformity. Labeling needs to be done in the form of a QR code printed or engraved on the battery. It is also said that if it is not possible because of batteries technicalities, it can be put on the supporting documents. It needs to have information about main characteristic of the battery, its lifetime, charging capacity, requirements of separate collections, presence of hazardous substances, and safety risks. Hazardous substances in the terms of this regulation are usually considered mercury and cadmium. And there's an additional requirement for EV batteries. This is the battery management system. It is electronic database that will be mostly based on parameters that serve as values for battery durability and performance. The battery management system is also managed in the UN Global Technical Regulations. So it's a requirement used for EV batteries. As it comes to conformity, there is a presumption of conformity. So every battery that has been tested following harmonized standards shall be presumed to be in compliance with requirements of performance and durability and labeling. So it will bear a UE declaration of conformity and the CE marking. The CE marking is refers to a marking by which the manufacturer actually indicates that the battery is in compliance with applicable requirements set by EU law or specifically this regulation. It needs to be fixed in a visible manner, and it needs to be fixed to the packaging or documents accompanying the battery. It has to be fixed before the battery is placed on the market, and it has to be followed by an identification number of a notified body that did a conformity assessment. So another article deals with the so-called notified body that will go through with conformity assessments of batteries that are being for the first time placed on the EU market. There is another obligation that is concerned with end users. So it is said that the EU Declaration of Conformity must be written in a language that can be easily understood by consumers. And this has to be done for each battery that is placed on the market and put in service, no matter if it's already been integrated in a vehicle before entering the market or just the battery enters the market. So now we have also a novelty due diligence policy that an obligation for economic operators that place EV batteries on the market. They're required to establish supply chain due diligence policies, so even more papers. The supply chain due diligence policy need to have some mandatory information. It goes from raw materials description, who is the supplier of these materials, the country of origin, and even market transaction from the raw materials extraction and the quantities of each material. So this is something that economic operators need to do, I would just like to add that they also have additional due diligence policy regarding their internal management system, risk management, third-party verification, and disclosure of additional information concerning raw materials. These reports have to be done on an annual basis, and they must be open to the public. So this regulation, to sum it up, brings a lot of technicalities and a lot of requirements for economic operators. And as we said, economic operators are manufacturers, importers, and distributors. So now we come finally to the end-of-life management. Here we have definition of a producer. And we have been using the term economic operator till now. So it's basically the same. So a producer is any manufacturer, importer, or distributor who, irrespective of the selling technique used, supplies a battery in a member state for the first time on a professional basis. It doesn't matter whether it is incorporated into a vehicle, appliance, or just the battery itself. And then we have an extended producer responsibility, of course, when the battery is for the first time put on the EU market. The extended producer responsibility refers to the obligation to point out collection points in a specific member state the manufacturer operates. So the producer actually has to provide a separate collection of waste batteries and to report and promote a separate collection of batteries. If the producer cannot do it himself, they can establish a producer responsibility organization. So the collection of waste batteries will be done either directly from end users or collection points. It has to be free of charge and without imposing an obligation on the end user to buy a new battery. It is also mentioned that if the distributor organizations, then it has to be retrieved. The battery has to be retrieved in their retail outlet or at the vicinity of their retail outlet. And now the question is, what if the operator supplies batteries by means of distance contract to end users? This doesn't change anything because that operator first needs to appoint a representative and then needs to provide a sufficient number of collection points that cover the whole territory of a member state, and needs to take into account a few parameters, considering that member state, like population size and density and expected volume of waste batteries. Okay, so we're finally coming to an end. This is battery passport. It has also been a lot in media, this term specifically, because it is for the first time that each battery will have electronic record, a real passport. And it is only done towards EV batteries. By 1st January 2026, all EV batteries shall have an electronic record for each individual battery. Main features, they have to be unique for each individual battery, just like a real passport, identified through a unique identifier provided by the economic operator, linked to the information about the basic characteristic of each battery type and model stored in the data sources of the electronic exchange system. The electronic exchange system is established by the regulation. I think it's Article 64 or something, and it has to provide access to information about the values of performance and durability parameters when the battery is placed on the market and when it is subject to changes in its status. For example, when it comes to its end of life and it is either a waste battery or a repurposed battery. And to end this, I would just like to add a few words about the UN Global Technical Regulations on in-vehicle battery durability for electrified vehicle number 22. So the global technical regulations are like a series of harmonized methods to set and verify minimum performance requirements on in-vehicle durability of electric vehicles, or as the regulations call them, pure electric vehicles, and of vehicle charging hybrid electric vehicles or plug-in hybrids. So when we talk about batteries, we use the GTR number 22. It provides a worldwide harmonized method to set and verify minimum performance requirements on in-vehicle battery durability. So the reasons to introduce this part of the global technical regulation was actually connected to a mainstream adoption of electric vehicles. So the main part of an electric vehicle is the traction battery. It needs to provide increased driving range, reduced charging times, and a greater affordability. I have mentioned all of this, but this is very important. So if a battery cannot provide that, and as I said, all problems connected to electric vehicles stem from its battery, then it will lose its utility and it will produce a negative consumer sentiment and curb the whole market growth. So also the environmental performance of electric vehicles may be affected by excess degradation of the battery over time. So it would battery degradation would lead to a loss of driving range and reduced performance. I said that there is also technique that was used traditionally, the accelerator aging technique, but it cannot be used to all forms of chemistries and especially to alternative batteries. So something else needs to be done to measure the battery's health, state of health and durability. So the GTR number 22 introduces in two phases a methodology to address main concerns by introducing the battery management system. As we said already, it is mentioned in the regulation. A battery management system is also called the software of the battery. So the chemistry, the cell, the module, this is the hardware of the battery. And the battery management system is known as the software of the battery. It is a method by which the health of the battery can be monitored over time. And the GTR wants to set minimum performance requirements for the durability of the battery that all manufacturers are going to use. So now come to that, I would just like to add a few things maybe to think about. So we need to focus, the whole industry needs to focus on delivering a more sustainable and responsible battery value chain. As you already said, it's not just enough to drive a zero emissions car. It needs to be done right from the extraction to the end of life. But at the same time, the EV battery market needs to maintain competitive and needs to develop alternative batteries. The main point here is not only to make the climate carbon neutral. It is also to provide the same level of comfort we have driving conventional vehicles with an internal combustion engine. So there are actually many things that need to be fulfilled when it comes to electric vehicles. There is a need for a technological breakthrough for massive use of electric vehicles. I would like to add, this is kind of off record. I talked to many engineers about that. I even watched an autonomous vehicle on a racing track in June. But the problem with mainstream use is that we need a great infrastructure. And they have told me their opinion that, and I kind of agree with them, that the law for the first time is preceding technology. Usually always technology is coming before the law because it emerges at a really rapid pace. But at the moment, it seems that the law is coming before the technology, as also these documents like the Paris Agreement and some others says that we need a better science. But they need to find an equilibrium. And as I mentioned, autonomous driving, I have also listened to some engineers. It was a podcast a few months ago. Electric vehicles and autonomous driving go hand in hand because electric vehicles are not the only, but the ideal platform to build the level 5 autonomy. That means no driver input. And it has been called the automotive revolution or the automotive 2.0. So I'm finished. We can start. I will stop sharing my screen and hopefully we can start with questions.
Thank you, Lucia. Congratulations. I think I can
Thank you.
safely
I hope
say
it
that.
wasn't too much boring.
No, I think we can safely say that you had a beautiful presentation, both aesthetically, for which we have to thank our designer, Stefania.
Yeah, thanks,
She
Stefania,
was in
very much.
charge. She was in charge for designing the presentation, and I hope you liked it. But also oratorically, you've done a great job. So thank you. I invite everyone to open their microphones so we can upload our speaker today.
Okay, I see now the chat. Sorry, I was
Yeah, no
too much
problem.
into
So
talking.
if we
Okay,
can
let me
open
read a
the
bit.
microphones to upload Lucia, I will begin.
Sorry for going too much into chemistry. I will explain everyone everything, but it somehow goes. I'm now reading the comments. Somehow it goes hand into hand, and they're really. I actually cut a lot of things because I didn't want to confuse people. There is a lot of chemistry involved, but I can break it into parts. Okay.
To make a little joke, I think everyone is very well equipped now to watch Oppenheimer in cinemas.
Yeah, you're welcome.
No, that was really great, and I think everyone has a friend or maybe is looking into buying an electric vehicle. So I think it also helps us as individuals and not only as law professionals. So please, we can start the Q&A now. If you have a question for Lucia, please address it directly.
Okay, while people are thinking of
Yes.
questions, sorry.
I didn't know because I see also another colleague with the mic on, so I didn't know if she was going to speak or not. Maybe it's a bit forced as comparison, but I wanted to better understand. Since we were talking about the problems involved, that involves the extraction of the raw materials and the chemistry for the prosection of working the raw material. I missed the word, and the pollution and how and how to say. And now the new regulation asks for carbon footprint and a lot of transparency that goes hand in hand with sustainability. Can we say that? First of all, first question is how much this pollution relating to the extraction of raw material and recycling battery is, and if we can speak about how to say greenwashing before this new regulation when we speak about EV. It's forced. I know it's forced as a comparison.
No. It's a great question. The problem is that till now there has not been a lot of talk of making electric vehicles so mainstream. Now they want that each of us drives electric vehicle. And before that, we only had like high-end electric vehicles. So enthusiasts were buying electric vehicles. I mean, even, okay, I see now the comments, and I would also later like to say what I think of Tesla. Made it research. It depends actually in which part of the world you live. As I said, China is very much into electric vehicles as it controls a great market share. And Tesla made it a bit more commercialized. Maybe the thing about extraction and disposal wasn't talked about earlier because we didn't have such I don't know how to call it initiative to totally move to electric vehicles, because now we have bans on fossil fuel vehicles. That fossil fuel vehicles will not be able to be driven after 2030. And now we have this urge that we need to produce good enough electric vehicles that will serve us good enough so that we cannot suffer. I mean, like I talk with Theodore about that. For example, if we go and on a long journey, we cannot suffer if the battery overheats and our car stops in the middle of the road. We need to have charging stations all along the way. Some countries are great with that, but for example, in Serbia, the charging infrastructure is not really good. I was in Switzerland a few months ago. There it was great. I mean, better than Serbia. But for a mainstream adoption, we need to have a great infrastructure. We need to have affordable vehicles and safe vehicles, and the battery needs to be safe. So we will need a lot more material, and than we needed before. And now we are facing that there are already problems with extraction of lithium and extraction of cobalt. And now these alternative batteries are coming, but they still cannot, they are not good enough as lithium. So now actually it seems like we have a lot of problems, and but it's a very, in my opinion, this is a very fast push towards the use of electric vehicles. Don't get me wrong, I'm for them. But I think first everything else needs to be set in place before we can make such a massive production, and the raw materials extraction needs to be set in order. As I said, this is why sodium iron is so became so popular, because it is chemically similar to lithium, and it is environmentally friendly when extracted from the Earth's crust. So now we're seeking alternatives, but they still have to provide the same energy density as lithium.
Yeah, I understand.
I hope
because I'm a great fan of EV too, and of course I want a new electric car as mine is gonna die. But I think that lately we are actually more into the sustainability and the environment problems, and before we didn't really ask to ourselves all those questions we are asking now, and we were not actually too much focused on the raw material problems and the extraction problems. And of course, technology is evolving day by day, and of course it will be better than now. I hope so, at least.
Okay, we in Serbia had like problem with this. I mean, the mining was stopped, so I think we all know something about the extraction of lithium. And there was a problem with actually the citizens, and citizen organization want to stop the mining of lithium just because of this. I mean, I will say, to stay objective now, alleged problems, but the problems can be seen. I mean, if it is done right, it can be safe, but really a lot of safeguards need to be put into place. Otherwise, we are using lithium to make cars with zero emissions, but we are contaminating the land and groundwater. And if it is not done right from the material extraction to the end, we actually have done nothing. This is my opinion. So
thank you, Sonia, for the question, and to Lucia for the great answer. We also welcome our friend and colleague from WOLEP, Mr. Giancarlo Paolo Pezzuti from Italy, Naples. Hello, Giancarlo. Ciao.
Hello.
hello.
So, as the Q&A session is ongoing. We invite you to address questions to Lucia. You have priority, so before our questions, because I have a question for Lucia, but later. So please.
No, I'm sorry for delay. I don't have questions now. I'm sorry for delay. I just connected. Sorry.
No problem.
No problem.
So one thing that I identified as another imbalance.
Sorry, I have just a couple of observations I want to say, because a few minutes ago I had the chance to read some preamble of the regulation, the projects of regulation that the European Union wanted to apply to all the country states. But I don't understand the part where that says that the regulation doesn't apply to the member states, to basically critical sectors, army, military, and wherever the like. But what does this mean? That the government can do wherever they want, basically? What does it mean? The EU regulation regarding the battery, everything regarding the battery, the raw materials, and etc. What does it mean that apply to the member state, doesn't apply to the member states in these critical sectors? That it means that the government can do what they want.
Well, the Commission said that they use documents and guidelines. But when you read that article as it is written, the answer is yes, it doesn't. This regulation doesn't apply to equipment that is going to be sent into space, wars, munitions, and these critical sectors.
Yeah, but the meaning of critical sectors can be very large, very broad.
Yeah, it is a great question, and it's a great thing to think about, because as I said, this regulation imposes so many requirements that you need to create this policy, that policy. Everything needs to be transparent, as you said, and somehow, yes, it doesn't, the scope of application doesn't extend to wars, munition, and equipment sent to space. So if we read it like this, there will be no supporting document or no explanation by the Commission. It basically means that, this is my interpretation, because as I said, this has already been adopted in July. So we have no supporting documents yet, but at the moment, it means that these types of batteries that are used in these sectors are out of this regulation.
Okay, the second observation, and after I think I finished. In the regulations, one of the regulations you mentioned it, say that the purpose of one of the purposes of this regulation on the directive, one of them is to ensure that all the member states can have a common and fair access to the raw materials to produce the battery. Okay, I recall good. To ensure all the member states can access in a fair condition to the raw materials to produce the batteries. But if the raw materials are located in Africa, how this fair and common access can be ensured?
I think maybe I didn't have time
just if most of the company that have the extraction of these raw materials are from France, USA, and Germany. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. This is. I think this is a contradiction of the Commission. If they wanna ensure a common access to the raw materials, but on the other side, the access of these raw materials depends on companies that are located in France, Germany, and USA.
Yeah,
I don't agree with this.
I didn't get I didn't get into the depth of this, but most raw materials are actually in South America or Central Africa. That is why cobalt is called the blood diamond of batteries. They're linked to not only environmental problems when extracting, but also links to problems with human rights. So there have been some critics, for example, for some automotive companies. For example, when the whole world is considering cobalt to be problematic and scarce materials. Just this ago, or maybe more, I don't remember, but it was that got into contract with a Moroccan company that is extracting cobalt. So I'm not getting into their businesses.
Okay, no, just a common an observation regarding these.
The raw materials. Whoever supplies the raw materials for the production of the batteries. If you're for example, manufacturer batteries that is based in the EU, and your supplier is based somewhere else, for example, Morocco, let's say, because we mentioned Morocco. You will need to make supply chain due diligence policy, and you will also need to submit transactions, monetary transactions that you made with your suppliers. The whole explanation of the process and the description of all raw materials. So that is what they said. They didn't anyhow mention that the countries where the supplier, manufacturer, or whoever is. You're maybe talking now closer to the raw material sector that has not yet been adopted. Because the raw material sector, which we have only mentioned in a word or two because we're talking about batteries, but it is an interesting one because it wants to make a totally new supply chain and wants to make rules for the European Union to make its own supply chains because they are at the moment they depend too much on imports from third countries.
See. Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vincenzo, for the question. Great questions, actually, two of them. So if you have another question for our speaker, please. Very good observations from you. You've been paying attention to what Lucia said, that I can tell. So if there is no other question, I would have one for Lucia. Lucia, I identified another imbalance in, let's say, this whole process of production, which is the dependence on China, because you are talking about third countries. So China obviously is a big player in this market, and we've recently seen that Elon Musk has visited China, and he was received there quite like a president or like a king. The press, the press actually emphasized, the reception that he got. So he obviously, puts a lot of money into Chinese pockets. So what happens if at some point the high officials in China say we close the shop, we don't sell you any more batteries, or we don't produce any more batteries? What happens then with all of this talk of electric vehicles in the European Union?
Well, I think, again, mentioning the critical raw material sector, I think that's the reason also why it wants to be adopted, because it relies too much on third world countries, and especially China. I mean, China really is the market leader. It has two big manufacturers, and they both supply almost the whole industry. So just one, the Contemporary Emperor's Technology Limited has a 26% of the global market share. Then there is another BID that also has a great market share. So it seems like that China at the moment holds like half of the market at least. And as I said, they have been very fast in making the infrastructure. They are producing their own models. And if China closes the shop, it will be not a good thing, really, so colloquially speaking. But there has been a shift also when it comes to car manufacturers. Most of them are starting with in-house battery manufacturing. So there has even been like something that Tesla is also starting. And as I said, high-end vehicles like Rimac technology have already been producing batteries in-house. Will it be affordable? I really don't know, because as I said, it's not really a problem when you make high-end vehicles. It's a problem when you need to convince the world to use electric vehicles, because they really need to be affordable and reliable. So I think that the EU is now changing the tables, because it really is reliable on China. The half of the world actually is. I mean, even if you read about the market, you will see that China dominates it.
Thank you. So they realize that it's critical to diversify and to find other options. And as a closing question or a remark, I wanted to ask you, from your direct experience, what is the role of lawyers in this sector, of regulating electric vehicles? So what can you as lawyers do, and is there a market for lawyers in this industry?
Yes, there certainly is. And this regulation and all these documents that it brings, that means even more jobs for lawyers.
So that's a good
Because
thing,
as you can...
it compensates for artificial intelligence.
Yeah. So there are many requirements that need to be fulfilled by this regulation. If they're not fulfilled, the battery cannot enter the EU market. That's a too big market, and there will be more jobs for lawyers in interpreting this regulation, and especially when it comes to supply chain due diligence policies. I mean, we cannot calculate the carbon footprint or how much carbon dioxide is there, but when it comes to supply chain due diligence policy, I think that we'll have some job to do.
That's a very good way to close off our webinar. Thank you again to Lucija for the very entertaining presentation, but also for the very insightful answers that she provided to your questions. I encourage you to connect with Lucija, to keep in touch. Like I said at the beginning, we also look forward to meeting in person and to develop the networking of our community. We'll be in touch to provide you with the certificates of attendance. Thank you so much. Also with the recording of our meeting. And last but not least, I would like to wish you a very good, first of all, a very relaxing summer holiday, because we are nearing the month of August, which is traditionally the summer holiday for lawyers. And please don't be shy, and maybe share some holiday pictures with us in order to post them to our social media channels. So thank you so much for this meeting, and let's see each other again in early September. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for attending, everyone. It was really an honor to present this.
No, thank you for your presentation. Very interesting.
Thank you.
And I know that I said that it's the last thing, but I also encourage everyone who was not already a speaker in the WOLEP webinars to propose a subject, because we'd love to have you as speakers. So Vincenzo, Angela, Elena, Giancarlo as well.
Yes, I will.
Please,
I'm preparing.
please. We look forward to it.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Thank you so much, and see you again.
Have
Bye-bye.
a nice holiday,
Have a great evening.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy your summer.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
You as well.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.